Michael McQueen, welcome to the Asian edition of 5 Minutes with O.
Thanks, Leanne.
So we're talking about generations today. Is it a Western phenomenon?
Typically, or historically, yes. So up until probably the late 70s, the discussion of generations was, I guess, most accurate for, the Western environment. So America, Canada, the UK, Australia, South Africa. But from the early 80s onwards, particularly with the onset of Gen Y, we've seen the emergence of a global youth culture, which means that national boundaries aren't as significant as they were in the past. And so there is an incredible degree of consistency. Certainly I've seen this in my work with Asian young people. There's such consistency right around the world, regardless of the area you're from, because this whole generation are all tapping into the same sources of popular culture, online and through music and videos and through movies.
So they're more the same than different. So, for example, a young person in Korea and someone in Canada.
Yeah, well, they're probably good examples, but yeah, right around the world. There's such consistency because, even in Asia, where I was probably surprised the first time I went to work with young people in Asia, on the outside, they seem more polite, more respectful, more submissive to authority. But you scratch behind the surface, and scratch beneath the surface, and they're incredibly similar to their counterparts in the West because they are keeping in step with those same sources of popular culture. Now, what that means is that the generation gap is so much wider. So you have a generation of leaders and managers who may be 3 or 4 generations removed from the young people because of that global influence.
But Generation Y, they're so viral. Is that why they're so similar?
Absolutely.
I mean, they just live in one big viral world, don't they?
Well, they're so connected. And so, whilst older generations had pen pals, remember those? Right?
I know how to write.
You know how to write letters. Well, this group, of course, just have friendship groups that are global. And, it's amazing seeing how this impacts in the developing world too. So a few months ago, I was in Uganda speaking at a conference. You drive through the dusty streets of Kampala, and you've got young people sitting on the side of the road, dressed in poverty, but they're on their mobile phones texting, they're on Facebook, they're on YouTube. And so in Asia, we're seeing the same thing, all tapping into those same sources of culture. And so that is causing a great degree of conflict in many organisations.
So going a little bit more helicopter view, please give us some of the key differences between the older generations and the younger generations within the Asian context.
Yeah, there are probably three areas where the most conflict is occurring. The first would be around work ethic, and you see this probably most clearly exampled in Japan, where you've got an older generation of men who worked so hard, had such a strong work ethic, but this younger generation of men in Japan coming through under the age of 30 or 35 aren't willing to give it all up just to climb the ladder. And it's perceived as laziness, which it's not. Okay, it's that their priorities are different. They want balance. And so you see certainly work ethic. I think the whole issue of respect is very significant. In Korea last year, when I was over there working with the government, they've done a longitudinal study looking at young people's attitudes, and the thing that came up most frequently is that young people have such a disrespect and distrust for the government, for those in authority. And now that's a really interesting thing because within an Asian culture, respect for age or position was always so core. And the last thing that causes conflict is around the idea of individualism. And you see this in China and Hong Kong, where historically you've had this idea of my role within the greater. So the greater company, but now it's all about me, the American view of my needs, my preferences, what I want.
We're seeing this impact coming into the workplace?
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
They're not as...
Probably not as, the word might be deferential, so deferring to the authorities, far more empowered, far more confident, far more articulate. And that's often very unsettling for bosses.
Yeah, are us oldies handling it very well?
Well, typically not, because it's seen as arrogance or presumption, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that way, but that's often how it is perceived.
Michael, I love your passion for the subject. As somebody who books speakers often, the passionate ones are the ones that always go so well. But tell me, where does this passion come from? How did you get interested in generations?
Well, I'm in this generation, I suppose, to start with. But more than that, so 7 years ago I started working with students in schools, both in Australia and around Southeast Asia. And it was all about helping younger generations understand their elders, so preparing for the workplace. And what became very clear is that this group, across the board, despite their very confident exterior, they're looking for connection, they're looking for leadership, boundaries, mentoring. And so the role of adults in their lives to make those connections is so key. So helping older generations do that, but On the flip side, helping older generations realise that there are benefits to engaging young people, and there's a lot to learn from young people. So it goes both ways, creating an environment where the older generations and the younger can work together. Something really powerful happens when that occurs.
Michael McQueen, thank you for spending 5 minutes with O.